Roll call.
Commissioner Oliver? Present. Commissioner Davidson?
Here.
Commissioner Wilson?
Here.
Commissioner Gooch? Here. Commissioner McMurray?
Here.
Commissioner Boyd?
Here.
Chairman Dodd?
Present.
We have a quorum.
Vice Chair Wilson, would you review the minutes?
Thank you, Chairman. I have reviewed the minutes from our previous meeting. I do find them to be in order, and without objection, I'd move for their approval.
We have a second. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Thank you. We have no public comments signed up for tonight, so we'll carry on with our agenda. Number one is Director Byron Cumby with the Health Department report. Hello, Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Byron Cumby, Director of your Rutherford County Health Department. Your health department continues to do good work for the people of Rutherford, and we are indeed proud to serve. Hopefully you have our outreach report there made available to you, and in keeping with our mission to protect, promote, and improve health and prosperity of people in Tennessee, as we protect here in the first column with our disease intervention efforts. And I did speak to our disease intervention team this morning. They assure me everything is in keeping with the ebb and flow and right on track. And our environmental health inspections, likewise, immunizations up a little bit, which we like to see as we kind of return to form. We promote with our health education outreach and community participation. And you can see our health educators participated in a drug take back on the 27th, and then on the 28th, they gave us a speech on fall prevention with our Rutherford County Council on Aging. And that Council on Aging does meet at our health department every 2 months, and we are glad to have them as a guest in our building. And then we improve with our primary care services. Just like the preceding, everything there seems to be on track. In COVID updates, the CDC's hospital admission metric in Rutherford County remains low, and we are glad to see that. We do still provide free testing to the public through our health department clinics, and that is done by appointment. In addition, we'd like to inform everybody that the federal government has reopened the test kits by mail program, so 4 rapid kits can be sent to your home by request, and you just call that number 1-800-232-0233. That's 1-800-232-0233, or request them online at covidtests.gov. Additionally, the Tennessee Department of Health has a community support hotline available to take questions about COVID, the new COVID vaccine, or flu vaccines between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. Central Time, and that is 615-770-6940. Speaking of the new COVID vaccine, that is available now at both of our clinics. We do ask that people call us to ensure availability before they come by. We also have that's the Moderna vaccine. We also have the Pfizer vaccine available for pediatric patients ages 6 and under. The RSV vaccine is now available through the Rutherford County Health Departments, and that's for the respiratory syncytial virus. It's a common respiratory virus that usually causes mild flu-like symptoms, but it can be serious, especially in infants and older adults over 60. So anyone interested in the RSV vaccine can contact their health department at 615-898-7880. On to the flu vaccine. The seasonal flu shot is now free and available without an appointment from 8 to 10 or from 1 to 3, Monday through Friday at both of our locations, Murfreesboro and Smyrna. The Tennessee Department of Health recommends flu shots for anyone 6 months old or older. The flu vaccine is safe and effective and can protect against the most common types of flu and against the virus's worst symptoms and outcomes. The statewide Fight Flu campaign that we held on November 1st was a success, with 528 vaccines administered in our Mid-Cumberland region that day. And in that region, Rutherford County was the only county health department to have to offer shots at 3 different locations. We did both of our clinics. We also offered a drive-through at our new public health and safety building in the Kittrell community. And we do want to take an opportunity to thank our county EMA leadership, Chris Clark and Tim Hooker, for their cooperation and participation in that exercise. Friday, November 3rd, 2 days after that, we at the Rutherford County Health Department hosted a car seat day and a health fair at our Murfreesboro location with the help of Vanderbilt's Pediatric Trauma Unit, Safe Kids Worldwide, and State Farm. We gave out 31 car seats and safety checked many more on that day. Our health department chant program gave away nearly 100 coats for kids from their winter coat drive, and we had vendors from dozens of community partners present. That all came together rather quickly as we were offered that opportunity on short notice to host an event and distribute those car seats to our community, but it would not have been possible without the generosity of Rutherford Countyans and the hard work of our health department staff. And finally, mental health first aid training. Our final mental health first aid training this year will take place on December 7th and 8th. That is an 8-hour training, so to make the experience more convenient for attendees, we have chosen to split the training into 2 days. Thursday, December 7th from 8 a.m. till 12 p.m., and then Friday, December 8th from 8 a.m. till 11 a.m. Mental Health First Aid is an early intervention public education program. It teaches adults how to recognize the signs and symptoms that suggest a potential mental health challenge, how to listen non-judgmentally and give reassurance to a person who may be experiencing a mental health emergency, and how to best coordinate referral to an appropriate professional support and service. Persons completing this mental health first aid training will receive certification for a period of 3 years. So anyone interested can reach out to the health department for information on mental health first aid training. Our phone number is 615-898-7880.
Thank you, Director. And who do you anticipate signing up for your mental health first aid training?
So far, that is open to anyone of interest in the public interest. So we have had people, we have made it known throughout county government, but we've had people from all walks of life take participation in that.
I just think that's tremendous to
Yes, sir.
open that box.
We've had 2 so far. We look to do it about quarterly next year, and that's funded by a grant that we hope goes on through 24-25.
Any questions of the Director, Ms. Oliver?
Thank you. Quick question about your communicable diseases. What population are you finding the tuberculosis in?
That typically is among new arrivals to our country. And that is typically a latent tuberculosis infection. And if tuberculosis, usually it is met by the body's immune system and kind of encapsulated, and it can lay dormant. It can lay dormant forever, or it can come back. But so those aren't really active cases that give us concern about spread, but more the concern about treatment, because it can take a toll on the body.
Thank you.
Mr. Wilson?
Yeah, the first aid mental health training, you said quarterly possibly next year. Would that include each one of those is going to come with that 3-year certification? There's 4 opportunities to get that?
That's right.
That's outstanding. I'd like to hear those dates just so we can get that out, because people might want to plan ahead on doing that. I might be interested actually myself in attending that. So
We'll try to pin those dates down and have those available maybe first of the year, so that way people can project outward.
that's a fantastic opportunity, and that's covered by the grant, all the costs. Fabulous. Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion to accept the report.
Motion to accept.
Second.
Laura, thank you. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Thanks. Thank you, Director. And next we have community care. And I did just take note that there was a special called meeting where the mayor appeared to be struggling to find a new administrator. And so I had dropped in our minutes that the mayor had addressed the salary, but I received an update today from the mayor that I think we'd like him to share. If you can come up. You and I were discussing the salary, and apparently you may have a candidate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It wasn't my intention to speak for you today, but it's always
Thank you.
a pleasure. So
Thank you.
you very much. So I'll try to recall from memory the minutes of the November 2nd meeting, and the first board meeting basically dealt with the selection of an administrator. And so we had 7 total applicants. 3 of those applicants found employment somewhere else. It's a highly competitive environment. And so 3 of those applicants found opportunities elsewhere. 2 applicants were not qualified. So we interviewed the remaining 2 applicants, and the board settled on one of those applicants. That applicant was Ms. Abigail Gerke, who is the current administrator, who's currently employed under contract by United Church Homes out there at Community Care. United Church Homes released Ms. Gerke from her contractual obligation so that she could apply for the position. So that was all done. That understanding was done prior to, obviously, to the interview process. So as a result of that interview process, Ms. Gerke was selected, and then we had an emergency called meeting on November 17th because we needed to address the discrepancy in some of the salary and compensation concerns. But we're pleased to say that the vote on the part of the board was 6-1, and to extend Ms. Gerke a contract offer beginning January 1st, 2024, and she has accepted the county's offer. And so we're working through the details of what a employment contract looks like. But we're excited that Ms. Gerke will get to stay on because more than anything, it brings continuity to the residents out there. And I know that there is a concern, and a justifiable concern, about the employees and the morale and the working conditions out there. Indeed, that's extremely important, and it's something the board takes very, very seriously. But our priority is the residents. And Ms. Gerke has shown an outstanding amount of care and empathy for assisting the residents in the latter years of their life. And so we're very appreciative of that. And I and the board are quite satisfied with the decision, and we look forward to moving forward. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll be glad to take questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Yes, Ms. Oliver.
Was her contract reflective of what transpired on the 17th? Or was it prior to what transpired?
No, what happened on the 17th was the board made a selection between the 2 candidates, and so we selected from those 2 candidates Ms. Gerke. That was on the 2nd. On the 17th, then, was the negotiation of the actual compensation for Ms. Gerke. And we needed to get that done before December because of the time frame involved for onboarding and offboarding with United Church Homes, which I'm glad you brought that up because it reminds me, and I was remiss, we also have employed the services of Job and Hastings, an accounting firm here in Rutherford County, Murfreesboro, that has a lot of experience in nursing home health care, a number of facilities they assist. And so when we brought them on board as our accountants and consultants, they advised us and helped advise us about what a competitive compensation would look like. And so they were tremendously helpful in that. And so after having gone through that, then we reached out with Ms. Gerke on the 17th with an offer. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'm grateful to hear that. I know my tour out there, Ms. Gerke was my tour guide, and she's tremendous, and that operation is tremendous. So to have that continuity, like Commissioner Oliver said, is really good to hear.
Well, I will say in the year and, 3 or 4 months that I've been mayor, that has been one of the more challenging aspects of being mayor is because you just the fragile nature of what we're working with out there. And I want to be extremely careful whenever we do change. I want to be, the rest of us get change. We understand change is necessary, but it's challenging for some others, and we're there to help them. And I want to go slow and go easy and make sure what we do is correct, Mr. Chairman.
Sounds good. Thank you, Mayor Carr.
Thank you very much.
I'm glad you were here. And that leads us to special reports. Director Smith, I know you handed out a chart tonight.
Good evening. I put a handout on your desk for the special projects report, or the Fund 189 progress report. We did this afternoon, right before the meeting, trying to get as much of the month of November in as possible, with the month in being Thursday. So I apologize for not being on your SharePoints, but we wanted to get it as current as we could. We generally try to do these at the end of the month, but the way this meeting fell, with the end of the month being Thursday, we got it as close as we could. So as you'll see, this report is going to reflect the recent bond issue, the money coming in October. One thing I want to point out is you're looking through here at the projects, you're going to see Riverdale, Oakland, and Smyrna, and you're going to see some amended budgets. We just stick the amount of the bond proceeds in a construction line item. That doesn't necessarily mean that that's what's going to be assumed on construction. The school system breaks out the FF&E cost, things like that. We just lump it in as soon as we get into the money so we can reconcile the report. If you need to detail exactly what the breakdown of FF&E construction, Trey Lee is here, so they can get you that if you need be for that. Any questions on that?
On the report in general?
Oh, just on this right here.
Yeah.
I have one thing to add after that if there's.
It looks like Smyrna is at like 20%. Is that about right? I'd love a tour. I need to come see you one day, Trey. And Oakland at Riverdale 8%, Oakland at 9 or 10. So you satisfied with the progress? I'm letting everybody absorb for a moment, just to make sure we're.
That's what I was going to ask. Explain to us what it is we're looking at.
So this is going to be a breakdown by project from a high-level view of the money allocated to each project and what is expended to date and the budget available in the fund for that project. So if we take an older project on the very first page, Laverne Middle Annex, back from 2019, that project, I'm looking at the schools, is pretty much done. However, there is some money remaining that at some point will be reallocated to a future project. And so what you're looking at then is the original budget and amended budget, and generally what that is money kind of set aside to start the project, then we do a bond issue or we come up with some additional funding, and then you're going to see the contracts to date column. That's going to be contracts or purchase orders that we have out. Then expended today, it's going to be expended as of the date of this report. Not obligated is going to be the amount of money that you could move out of the project to another project, and 99% of the time, if the not obligated amount equals the not expended amount, the project is at completion. You're going to see some redundancy in here, but we keep things separate from elementary and secondary, especially if you're looking at land, future land value money. And then we try to track it as we shift things around. We try to put notes on there as we move things. Now keep in mind, there are certain timelines. We're trying to spend bond money, the oldest bond issue first. And so some of that is going to be reflected in this report as well, because there's an arbitrage calculation time frame that we need to get the oldest bond money spent first. This report is really for y'all's information. The request to move money around in this fund will come from the school board. So those requests will not originate at this committee. This report is really for y'all's information and for any questions really for the school system as they come up here. But since we are a centralized system of accounting, we do keep the general ledger for the projects. As you're finishing looking over that, there's one other thing I'd like to add tonight as part of this report. As we approach the budget season in the spring, there will be a budget calendar that comes out at budget next week. We always put the budget calendar out in December. And so as we approach that and as we approach some anticipated borrowing requests from the school system, I'd like to make a request kind of to this committee. I'm getting a lot of emails, text messages, requests. Some are repeated, or kind of the same similar requests. And so if we could find a route to funnel those into a centralized area, I think it will allow me to better get the information to this committee or to budget That way I could share that information better. I've talked with the chairman a little bit. And I think it'd be a really good idea maybe if we could funnel those through the chairman as far as especially coming up with, I think there's some future bond requests coming. I think that would just help me get the information to y'all quicker and a little more concise, but just a kind of a request that I have.
Yeah, I became aware that again, there's been some redundant requests from committee members, from budget committee commissioners, and by all means, Michael and the school board is available, transparent, but I'm starting to hear some redundancy, and I'm also unaware of some of the questions. Number one, if there's questions from any commissioner, they're going to be good questions. They're going to be something we all need to hear. So, and I want to be aware of if a question or a trend of questions is coming through, I want to make sure this committee is aware of it. So I think it'd be a great idea to email me and Vice Chair Wilson and Michael, and then we can funnel those back up. If it's a question that needs to go to everyone, we may send Michael's response out to the entire committee. Again, just a way to streamline, be organized, and not be redundant, and make sure that we can give Michael some cohesiveness. And some of these questions may be something that we ask and he kicks back, I'll report next month. It could be something he can just add to his report on the following health and ed meeting, for instance. And also, just if there are reports, if there's data that any of you want to see on a regular basis, by all means, consider that. And if there's a report that the school board, Director Sullivan, or if Director Smith needs to have an update you want to see every month, let us know that, and we can get that taken care of as well. So thank you, Mike. Any other questions for?
I had a question just based on what you said previously when you talked about percentage complete. Can you ask that question again, or maybe tell me how you came to that question?
Yeah, I just
in
glanced
looking at this report.
Yeah, I just glanced at it when Michael handed it to me, and I just did a quick, I looked at expended to date and divided it by the contract to date. For instance, Smyrna High, I divided the 7.5 million by the 35 million and just popped up a quick percentage. I often think on percentages, so if I go see the building and I see 21%, I'm going to have an expectation. And it allowed me to ask Trey, hey, you feel like you're at 20%? So that's how it's just a quick, in my world, that's how I think in the construction world.
I want to add something to along those lines. As you're looking at that, keep in mind, in this day and age with the supply chain we're in, especially with some of these additions and construction projects that they're having, it's not going to be uncommon for some of these pay apps to be somewhat front-loaded on the front end if they're ordering all their steel bar joists on the front end and things like that. I don't want that to mis-skew. You know, if you see a 10% or 15% and you go out there and it doesn't seem like there's 10% done, it could be. I do know the two contractors the schools are using, and I do know there is some issues, still a little bit of issues getting supplies. So it could be that sometimes they're front-loaded based on that. So just keep that in mind as you look at that percentage, and kind of take that into a picture as a whole there. So. That's all I got.
Thank you. And so you guys, if you, over the course of tonight or over the course of the next month, if you do think of reports that you want to be consistent or something you want to see quarterly, or if there's some percent of completion summaries that you might want to hear about on a quarterly or biannual basis, we want to be sure and provide that.
One thing I forgot to mention, we do, at budget every month, it's on SharePoint. I get a lot of questions sometimes. We do a revenue analysis of not just the county funds, but also the school's general fund. And so you also can see on there a revenue report for the school's funds and the county funds, and an expense report for the school's funds as well. So if you're curious where their revenue is at, how that's coming in, just like you would be for the county, that is on SharePoint on a monthly basis at budget. So it's there for y'all's use.
And the timing on that's kind of to our disadvantage, because it goes to budget the week before the commission, and then if the commission is voted on, and then we're meeting after so we are kind of a month behind, is that? So,
That is on the SharePoint. So if you look, it's under the Budget Committee, and every month I give a fund balance report that is going to be on there. It's a pretty lengthy report, but there is a snapshot of the revenue, kind of where we're at on a percentage basis of revenue. It kind of breaks it down by category, and then you'll also see a fund balance report and some expenditures report for all the county funds, but also includes the school funds as well. So that is available there for y'all. And like Chairman Dodd said, that is always after we close the month. So generally, that report will be presented at budget next Thursday. And so that's why if we were to present it here, it would always be a month behind, because the way the property taxes and everything come in, we won't close the month really until the 1st or 2nd to have all those ready for you.
who all's on budget here? Who on this commission? Trey? Anyone else? And so I'm sure Trey could be a conduit to budget if we needed anything from them. Thank you, Director Smith. And I had one other note. We're moving on to the next item on the agenda is school board, and just in the vein of budgets, big items on our horizon. $157 million high school additions, just on 3 of these line items. I did want to let everybody know that the Tennessee delegation has put out an invitation to Chairman of Health and Ed, Vice Chair, Budget Chair, and Steering Chair, and the Commission Chair, Mayor Carr, Director Smith, home builder and real estate representatives, and our lobbyist, Will DeSanti. Am I saying it right? Denami, thank you. Put out an invitation to have a sit down and see if there's some direction. What are our revenue needs for schools? Is there some direction that we could get some agreement among those stakeholders? And could there be some language from a conversation that could make it into some legislative thoughts that could come back to steering committee to collaborate on this revenue shortfall that we have? I think we all know that we need more revenue streams. And so I just wanted to acknowledge to you guys that the state delegation, I think, is stepping up and is ready to entertain some thoughts from us. I know the steering committee and Mayor Carr are working hard on thoughts and resolutions, revenue streams. I think the delegation is listening, and they've asked for that meeting, so I just wanted you all to be aware. And that leads us to Dr. Sullivan. And I see we have,
I have a quick question, considering what you just said. A meeting to discuss revenue for our schools seems counterproductive to what the governor announced today about taking funds away from schools. So I'm not sure what is going to come out of that meeting.
Well, and I'm losing the term of that he voted on. I'm sorry, what was the voucher system? Excuse me. So you're referring to the voucher system, I suppose. So I don't. It sounds like a contradiction, but the state at the same time is saying, hey, are there revenue streams that could turn right back around and come to us? I know that sounds contradictory. I don't know that vouchers is on the agenda for a conversation with those guys and ladies. But I do know that there are some revenue streams that will help offset that. And we also have, Mr. Phillips.
Before we get into that, the meeting that our chairman just talked about, I believe it's on the 18th, scheduled for the 18th. After giving that some pretty serious thought and consideration, I will not attend that meeting. The select people that are there bypasses a true representation of our county commission. I think that should be the steering committee that deals with that, and not just 4 or 5 commissioners. Our steering committee has been in charge of legislative delegation. and they've asked for an annual meeting with our legislative delegation, which it appears that they are refusing to do. Also, with some legal advice, that meeting appears to be making some decisions, and there's multiple commissioners that are invited, and from some legal advice would be in direct violation of the Sunshine Law. So let me just say that your chairman will not. I will surely continue to support the legislative delegation meeting with this commission through your steering committee to discuss those options, as we have every year as long as I've been a commissioner, which has been well over 30 years. It doesn't mean that I would oppose to having some conversation, but as you guys know, we've been scrutinized a number of times for sunshine laws, and looking at the proposed agenda for that, there will be discussions, deliberations, and maybe even some decisions that will try to be made. And if there are multiple commissioners that are there, this is, in my mind, in direct violation of the Sunshine Law. From some legal advice that will also happen, and I would encourage some to kind of rethink that a little bit. The shareholders that are in that meeting are Home Builders Association, Realtors Association, Chamber of Commerce, 5 commissioners. I don't think best interest of legislative delegation. Go on and say that the steering committee will begin the process of dealing with our legislative delegation with a resolution for alternative taxes this coming Monday night. It's a big meeting, and that is where this commission, all of our commission, needs to be on the exact same page. We all want the same thing, and that's alternative to property tax. Don't care what you call it. It can be anything, an impact fee or development tax. It can be anything. That's what our county commission has been united on for a dozen years, and we need to go into the process also fully united. So your steering committee will be looking at a resolution a lot of facts that deals with problems that we'll be facing. And as we get into this discussion tonight on what the school board needs, revenue that we have coming in cannot cost of the growth that's coming. We are in a dire strait, and that is what needs to be communicated to our legislative delegation, and nobody else. Chairman, I would hope that we all are unified on helping or getting help from our legislative delegation to present Nashville to give us help on alternative to property taxes. You all well know that's all we have right now. The amount that we raised this past year, tax increase that will be repeated over the next 2 or 3 years. I'm not sure how you guys feel about raising those taxes like that every year, but if we have these type of challenges every year, we have to have some alternatives. Every municipality in Rutherford County has it. Everyone does. There are 3 contiguous counties to Rutherford County that has those options. And the amount of money that they're collecting versus the amount of money we're collecting is a drop in the bucket. Once again, I'm not opposed to that meeting that's coming up on the 18th. but the perceived agenda that's there from some legal advice that I received today not be the proper thing to do for this commissioner to attend a meeting, make decisions and deliberations on behalf of full support of our legislative committee, which is our steering committee. So I have an issue with that meeting. I apologize for breaking the news to you like this tonight, but I just reached that decision this afternoon, and it's with some legal guidance that you don't need to go. So follow that legal advice, and I'm not. But I would encourage you guys to really follow what's beginning to happen and will happen now, December, all the way through January and into February as our legislature meets, and our attempts to get our legislators to help us have the opportunity at additional revenue. Apologize to our chairman. He's talked to me about this meeting a couple of weeks ago. I thought it probably would have some merit, and I think it probably still does to a degree, but I've got some real concerns about that meeting. I'd like to see, if the chamber is really interested, to participate with our legislative delegation through our steering committee, because they are the ones that deal with it. Not me, not 5 commissioners that I have with it, and I think the majority of our commission would support me attending I feel versus how I really appreciate your listening to my rambling for a few minutes, and a major stakeholder in this is our school board. 77% of our budget goes to the school board, and they're not included in that meeting. So if they got stakeholders there, they need to be there. They need to hear it, and they're not. So there are some things with that meeting that I have a particular issue with. I spent an hour and a half in our mayor's office this afternoon. We talked about that, and he's gotten the exact same advice. And from what I heard from him this afternoon, I don't want to speak for him, but he's not going to attend that meeting. Can't speak for the other commissioners. They make up their own minds and will do whatever it is that they want. That meeting is to find solutions and or reach decisions that relate to compromise in our position on reaching taxes, someone that some of those stakeholders could support. So, and I don't know how else to say it, other than since 2010, County Commission has asked our legislative delegation for help. No help, zero help from them. Past year, this County Commission got the ear of our legislative delegation. This commissioner, not as your chairman, but this commissioner is in the process of saying, I want what our cities have. That's what I want. A compromise. I want the ability to make our decision and not somebody else tell me what I can do and what I can't do. So, rambling, and I apologize for that, but that meeting that I thought might have merit after looking at the agenda and seeing discussion that was supposed to take place and some deliberations and maybe even some decisions being made is a direct violation of the Sunshine Law. Those things would need to be advertised, the media would need to be there, and available for
And I'm going to, if I may,
you're
Commissioner,
more than welcome.
thank you. It was my understanding that there would be guidance to the delegation to make sure it was legal, and far be it from me to advise any commissioner to participate in an illegal meeting. So I'm going to stop this conversation. If I have bad information, I'm going to stop it now. I will not advise any commissioner to participate in something that's advisably incorrect. And I will say, the only motivation for this meeting was every single thing Commissioner Phillips just suggested. Nothing different, nothing more, nothing less. And we, because of the allegation of pushing legal boundaries, I'll strip this from tonight's agenda. It'll be in the minutes, but we will not discuss it anymore until we get appropriate counsel. Which leads us to Dr. Sullivan's report on the school board.
I do have
Under
a
that
question,
note-
please,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman. So is this meeting in lieu of the meeting that we were notified that was supposed to be in January?
To my knowledge, no. And it was not, it was going to be advertised, it was going to be opened, but the table was going to be small to see if a few of the highlights from the committees that are most intrinsically involved in education could just bounce on some highlights, have a home builders and realtor lobbyists present to listen, acknowledge, have the delegates here and listen. And if it was going to replace this long tradition that we've had in the full commission, I would not be an advocate for that, and I was not aware of that. It sounded like, to me, it was an independent, small round table to facilitate some collaboration. And
And it's not including the school board?
not, it was the health and ed extending to the delegates the numbers that the school board has shared with us. How many, $100 million a year, where are you? And I'm gonna have to stop. I keep saying I'm gonna stop. I'm treading on, because of Commissioner Phillips' comments, we're treading where I as chairman don't want to be advocating for or stumbling into ethical boundaries.
So let me ask you this question. Is this something that we might need to be in an executive session for, so that, I mean, am I the only person that has concerns here?
Commissioner
I'm
Phillips
not
does.
sure.
So my only reason to stop is, I'm not going to say the meeting's canceled. I didn't do the invitation. I'm not going to say the meeting's on because it's been accused that it's illegal. So my only reason to stop is I need counsel, and there's no counsel here. Vice Chair, any comments? Anyone else? We will move on to the Board of Education.
Evening, Commissioners. I'm going to let Mr. Runyon, our Finance Director, go over the budget amendments, and I'll chime in with just some updates of kind of what they mean during that time, and then come back and do some zoning updates and all that kind of fun stuff.
Good evening. I have passed out a handout to y'all that's got a staple on it, or paper clip that says the Rutherford County Schools H&E agenda items for November 28, 2023. What this is there was a mistake in what was uploaded to your SharePoint on budget amendment number 2. There was an additional amount that was added that should have not been in there. So what we are going to be asking to be approved tonight is what's in this and not what's on your SharePoint. So I'm going to read this and go from there. The Fund 141 budget amendments. The first amendment increases the budgeted Fund 141 revenue and expenditures to recognize the awarded amount of the state-funded FY 23-24 Public School Security Grant and the carryover amount of the FY 22-23 Safe Schools Grant. These monies will be used to provide digital threat assessment training for SROs, active shooter training to school staff, the purchase of radios/repeaters, radio software, weapon detection systems, bullet restraint film, cameras, and portable lighting and generators. Both grants total the amount of $2,361,940 and have been approved by the State Department of Education. There is not a required local match for either grant. And the $2,361,940 our board did approve, but I am providing them with the revised a revision for them to sign off on.
The item, did y'all see the one in SharePoint? Yeah, okay, so it had that, what, 3.5 million, Ms. Oliver? That was just simply a typo. It got dropped into the spreadsheet. The 2.3 is what the school board voted on. What was your vote? Was it 7-0 or 6-1? 7-0. We'll entertain these separately. So I'll open the floor for discussion before we entertain motions, and if anybody wishes to make a motion, by all means do so.
I move to approve the motion as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Davidson,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner Boyd,
Yes.
Commissioner McMurray,
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch,
Yes.
Commissioner Oliver,
Aye.
Chairman Dodd.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Commissioner Gooch.
a question for clarification. So this is a digital training or for the SRO, school staff, so forth and so on?
It's a mixture of a lot of things. That is one component. So with the state application, we had to list everything that we possibly could do with that type of funding. This is different. So this includes two things. One of them is carryover from last year's Safe Schools grant that we used to receive every single year. We talked about in this commission or in this committee before, Safe Schools grant went away. It was included as part of TISA's base, and so that's why you don't see a Safe Schools grant 23-24. The other grant is the public safety grant. That is the one that was a result of the covenant situation that involved the governor giving one-time funds. And so that's what those two come from. This one involves, one small portion involves training for our SROs. This is not the grant that added extra SROs. That would come to the Sheriff's Department.
Right, so it's going to be training and also some equipment as far as weapon detection systems, bullet-resistant film. Okay, that's on your glass?
Yes.
Okay, got you. And other things, so, okay.
And if anyone attended the Riverdale Oakland football game, I guess 2 weeks ago, we tested out one of the Evolve systems, and it went so well, it moved faster than our ticket counter moved. And so that's not what you would expect from a weapons detection system. So it went very well.
Mr. Gooch, yeah. All right, we have another amendment.
Okay, so the second amendment is the same as what's on your SharePoint. There was no changes to that. And what it does is the amendment increases the budgeted Fund 141 revenue and expenditures to recognize the awarded amount of the state-funded FY 23-24 Innovative Schools Model Grant. This grant will be allocated to fund additional CTE positions at RCS high schools. It also provides other supplies, material, equipment, and capital outlay for innovation and CTE programs of study at the high school and middle school levels. The grant is for the amount of $17 million and has been approved by the State Department of Education. There is no required local match for this. And I will say this is not $17 million just for 1 year. It's over a 3-year period. And I'm sure there are plenty of questions about this one. Yep.
But the 17 will all of it be placed into the fund, but it has to be spent over 3?
One time $17 million. So a couple things to hit on what this fund is. There are a lot, as we know, across our state, most districts are rural, and they don't have the expansive career and technical education programs that we do in Rutherford County. We offer every program and every certification just about that you possibly can. And so this went to fund $1 million at every comprehensive high school and up to $500,000 at every middle school. One-time funding. You'll see in some of these, if I'm looking at one, I'll just kind of give you an example. There is, you look towards the bottom under 72,710, and then you'll see under 706 regular capital outlay, 8.7 million. And so the reason 8.7 million is there, if you guys will remember, for just like you're a month behind budget, this committee is about a month behind when our school board passed something. So this October, we were looking at building our own career and technical education center on the north end. And looking at that, it's going to cost more than we feel comfortable in the Innovative Schools Model Grant. We looked at different lease options, but then that hits the bond ratio for the county, so that wasn't an option. And so instead, we're going to look at using these funds. So you'll see an amendment come through, but a lot has transpired in the last month, as you can imagine. So what this will not be for, it is not going to be for, as much as possible, anything that's recurring. We are going to have some positions for career and technical education in here. The way that the state funds TISA, they fund you based on your outcomes and what certifications. So there's a strategy that we kind of want to try to see if we can hire some positions that have a very high revenue outcome for students if they get a certification, so that the position may actually make money. I know that seems like a strange way of wording it, but if you can get 60 or 80 kids through there and get them a high-end certification that earns $5,000, then that position is more than covered itself. So we want to try that. Those would be the only recurring cost, and we would end up funding those through CTE anyways. So happy to answer any questions. What I think is the unfortunate part of it, especially for the public and for the commission gets these questions about, is the way the state is granting these funds, it goes straight into your general fund. So these two grants together are almost $20 million, and it looks like our budget just grew an extra 3%, even though it was state funding. And so it's that or don't take the money, and we all know we can use the funds. So happy to answer any questions.
If I could just ask one question, the grant, like the $17 million bucks, are there reports, some type of audits that you guys have to go through to make sure that those funds are expended in a particular way?
They are. So we not only have to submit an application to be able to use the funds, then we have to go back and submit reimbursements. Along with that, we then end up getting audited by the state for multiple levels as well. So we have to expend, it is an entire data software that's online called ePlan that we have to use for any state grant. And that's ePlan, is Brian spends just about all of his life in ePlan.
Even though it goes into general funds, it's not really
No.
very specific.
Very specific, yep.
And the 8.7 in the building construction that you feel like underfunds your intended use, how was it, your board, we just need to pay to watch the board
Yes.
meetings for one thing, but
Yep.
it will have to come back to us as an amendment to move it from the building construction, or if you
Move it to a
reuse
different
it in
line
that.
item. Yes. So there's a couple, so we have that 8.7 million that is in there right now that was going to be built for a CTE center. If we need to, and we will need to move some, but we definitely will have some construction cost if we wanted to add an aviation program, for example, on the north end, because we have one on the south end. I think mechatronics would probably cost too much to add right now. We'd probably need to partner with TCAD and Smyrna instead of adding that to one of our local high schools on the north end, but there will be some construction cost. It's not going to be the 8.7 million to build a center. That just wasn't going to, for the amount of square footage we could get and the amount of students, it wasn't going to be worth it. I also like to look at operational cost. I didn't think it was prudent to potentially open an elementary school, 3 high school additions, and a CTE center all in the same fiscal year when this would come online. So,
Mr. Gooch?
So is this, are there, just to make sure I'm understanding what we already have, are there already CTE centers in high schools, some of the high schools, or?
each high school has their own CTE pathways and clusters, what we call them, so that the kids have a certain pathway and we offer all 16 in some of our schools, split amongst. What a long-term goal is to be able to have a CTE center in both sides of the county so that all students who want to attend and get that pathway, for example, can. It's just not one of our top 3 priorities right now when we're
Right,
growing
yeah.
as quickly as we are.
And so, what is the path at Oakland?
Do what?
What's the path at Oakland?
Mechatronics is one of their big ones.
Okay.
Yep.
I just want to make sure.
We have at least 4 to 5 at each high school. So whether it's business marketing, mechatronics, culinary, cosmetology, I mean, there's 16 major pathways that we look through.
Could maybe next month get a
Absolutely.
print? Okay.
Yep, absolutely.
So let the minutes reflect a request for the 16 pathways, is that and where they are? Okay. Well, good question.
I'll present that report. It's actually, if you go to our school website and under academics, curriculum and instruction, the very first link is CTE pathways, and I'll bring everybody a copy of it. Digital by school, organized by even course code they take.
So any other questions for the gentleman? Or I will entertain a motion, and if there's more discussion, we can do that after this second, if it occurs. Ms. Oliver,
I was going to ask a question, but you
please
just
do,
answered
yeah,
it.
if more discussions.
With your CTE, did you say you have them in middle schools as well? And so what and where?
All middle schools have STEM, so we follow for career and technical education, it has to be a state course code. STEM is the main one for middle school, and so that's where we have a little bit of technology, whether it is coding. Siegel Middle School has one for their, I've gone blank, connects with their veterinary science, but I can't remember the name of the actual course code, but most of them just have the STEM requirements. We're looking at adding computer science, but if I add computer science, then I have to add a teacher at each school, and I'm not comfortable doing that just with staffing numbers.
I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
In a second.
Second.
Mr. McMurray. Any further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner Davidson,
Yes.
Commissioner Oliver,
Aye.
Commissioner Gooch,
Aye.
Commissioner Boyd,
Yes.
Commissioner McMurray,
Yes.
Chairman Dodd.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, Dr. Sullivan, update.
Yep, so we've had lots of fun at the school system recently, so you have a couple handouts, then I'll go over and answer any questions you need to. So one of the things that we have discussed is before we could continue and come and ask the commission for funding for growth is that we need to use our available resources. And I hope that you're going to see we have used our available resources to the best of our ability and had some real painful conversations and decisions involving zoning. That is one of the jobs we have to do to make sure we're doing it. I'm not sure a time where we've ever done a K-12 rezoning before, but it was a lot of fun. My first time doing it, our board's first time doing it together, and hopefully we can go a couple years without it. But I wanted to show you just an update. First is just a picture of our elementary school zones. And so just to give you an idea of kind of where you can see where the growth, where it is most dense, where the large majority of our schools are, trying to wrap around some of those. Our elementary zones would go into effect in the 25-26 school year, but what you will see is that all of these are dependent on a new school. And so the Beatty Elementary project that we talk about, you will see in order to relieve overcrowding where that zone is. If you'll flip over to the fourth page, so I have the maps first and then I have the projections. And here's some good news. With the new elementary school, you will see that we get rid of the red and actually are able to have some green, a little bit of room for growth in some areas. And so these are our projected capacities if we continue to grow at the rate that we are growing last year. Unfortunately, we're growing a little bit quicker right now than we were at this time last year. Last year, we only added about 800 students. We're quickly adding way more than that in the first semester, but I'll get into that in a second. But you'll see what our capacities are. This does have the new elementary school coming online in the 25-26 school year. That's why you see the functional capacity, the new capacity, because it's a new building, so I'm just in the middle of the page, new elementary. Then current 0 because it's not open. 952, 980, 1,031, 1,002. So we put basically 1,000 students in that building as soon as it opens. You'll see one of the areas, the 2 schools that are still undercrowded after this, Plainview Elementary School and then Wilson Elementary School. We left Wilson smaller on purpose. The Smyrna Ready Mix and the Hollingsheads are still working, as many of you know, to go across Percy Priest Lake and 840, and as soon as they have all of that infrastructure in place, that is our next huge area of growth, just continuing over to the east side, south of Nashville. And so we kept those smaller a little bit on purpose. But a little bit of good news that you'll see that we've been able to shrink. One of our other big challenges was Roy Waldron, and so shrinking it back down and only using one building and moving those students over to our available seats at Laverne Lake and John Coleman. And so John Coleman was a replacement building a couple years ago, probably 7 or 8 years ago at this point, and it is a nice facility that we need to make sure we are putting more students in than we have currently. And so that's our elementary update. Any questions on the elementary, and then we'll move into the not so great news ones. But wanted to start with a celebration. All right, let's flip back to the second page, if you will. All right, second page is middle school. This would not go into effect until the 26-27 school year. And looking at, again, us needing a new middle school. And so I know there was discussion, and we won't get into any of that about the meeting portion, but I don't think it goes without saying that we are going to need additional funding for a middle and a high school very soon. And so whatever that revenue comes from, our school board's task is to ask for what we need, and that's what we're going to have to do, is ask for what we need. And so you will see the middle school zone is already built into this plan. If you will flip over to the 5th page that has recommended concept middle school and high school, it has X's across the bottom. Ignore that X across the bottom because that's not the plan that we went with, and I'll get into that in a second. But couple challenges, and this is where middle school, you can see where when you guys will probably ask, do you need a middle school or a high school next? Both. It's hard to choose which one when our enrollment is this size. So if you look at Blackman Middle School, this is our 24-25, where we are looking at for next year, 17-16. They're already at 1680 right now, so to think they're only going to grow 36 students, that's where our trend is unfortunately going a little bit quicker. It is the largest middle school in the state and continues to grow to be the largest middle school in the state. If you look down at Rockville Middle, they're at 1560. We just added on to, I think, 20, how many classrooms did we add on to there, Trey, to Rockville Middle? Was it 20? 23 classrooms. They will be at capacity very soon, if not already there by the end of this school year. Rockville Middle is the 2nd largest middle school in the state. And so those are our 2 big schools. If you take, without a new middle school, you just take those numbers under current and push them out further to the right. And so even with a new middle school, we still have challenges. Yeah.
Quick question. I just want to get clarification. You said 1568 was Rockville. Did you mean Blackman Middle?
No, so that's their current capacity, but Blackman Middle has actual portables already.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Rockville Middle's capacity is 1470 roughly, but we've used some extra closets that we had even out of their addition. So the city schools, and this is just a good discussion, city schools is somewhat doing away with some of their 6th grade classes, and we had a huge jump in 6th grade enrollment at Rockville Middle School. Huge jump. So they were in great space last year. They actually shrank a little bit. We thought we were going to have a little bit of room to grow, and then all of a sudden an extra 150 kids showed up the next year. So that's Rockville Middle, but you will see again the new middle school, even by having a new additional building, there's still going to be some challenges. Christiana Middle School, Rock Springs Middle, and then Rocky Fork Middle. Rocky Fork Middle will probably be okay at that role just because I opened that school, so I'm familiar with its enrollment and its capacity. It has a lot of students on a zone exemption right now because it wasn't filled to capacity. And so we left that one a little bit higher on purpose. But again, these numbers take into account having a new middle school. If we do not have a new middle school, Blackman Middle, I see no way in the next couple of years they're not over 1,900 to 2,000, and Rockville Middle being over 1,750. And that's just way too many middle school adolescents in one building. So happy to answer questions on middle school. Told you I started with the nice one first, elementary.
Does the Beatty Farm have adequate acreage for
Yes.
a middle school in addition to the elementary?
Yes, and that is, the zone is already built out on this so that we didn't have to rezone kids again. We're waiting to rezone until a middle school's there.
So the new middle school that takes Blackman from a theoretical 110% to 84% is with the new school on the Blackman Farm?
Correct.
Or the Beatty Farm?
Yep.
And the Beatty Farm, is that elementary and middle?
Elementary, middle.
But not
Yes, sir.
high school?
It doesn't have enough room for all three. Any other questions on middle school? All right, and then we will go to high school. So high school has we called it the alternative high school concept, was one we ended up going with. So easy zone lines for the most part using major roadways. If you look at the very last page, I believe, this is where you'll see our concept projections, and this was done strategically. So on one of the concepts, we had a lot of our schools getting very close to 3,000, and so we realized that getting close to 3,000 with several schools wasn't something we wanted to do. So we revised some of those. Unfortunately, this doesn't take into account a new high school, so these projection numbers are what we project. A high school, looking at it funding-wise, is a year to 2 years. Then you're looking at building in a perfect world, 2 years, but probably 2.5 in this area. I don't see a way we open a high school before 28, 29. And so we are going to be living with this many students in our building for where we are right now. Looking at the alternative high school, there's a couple things I know we're going to have to address. In this plan, you will see that as we move over to some of our schools, there's still the ones that are overcrowded. Smyrna High School is overcrowded, Stewart's Creek High School is overcrowded, Laverne High School is overcrowded, which makes that need for the North End High School so desperate. I also feel like, and we're going to discuss this at our school board meeting next Thursday, I don't believe a Laverne High School addition and a new high school in the North End are a one or the other. I believe it's both. So that we can fit the number of students that we have. I don't consider it do you need the addition to hold off? Because if you hold off, sure, you may have enough to get most of Laverne High School into there by 28, 29. But now we have Smyrna High, Stewart's Creek High, and Laverne High School all way busting over the seams. So I said high school wasn't a great option. This is from our RSP group as well that ran the numbers based on birth rates, students enrolling, students moving. I'm concerned that the projections aren't high enough for some of our students based on what our enrollment growth has challenged the last couple months. So last thing I'll go over is if you look on conclusion, so I meant to include this together. I have no idea what happened to the staple on the right-hand side. I'm a OCD person. I have absolutely no idea what that is. No clue. I apologize for the staple. I don't know what happened. Conclusion, and this is from RSP. So looking at it, new elementary school zones projected to serve 950 to 100 students, utilization about 90. So this allows us to remove quite a bit of our challenges. The new middle school definitely relieves us on some, but you'll see that third bullet, more middle school capacity is needed to solve our challenges. Then we looked at what happened for high schools. Oakland High School zone, as we've told the commission, we extended it to be 95 to 99% utilization, so we have the seats, we need to use them. Riverdale High School is extended to establish 99 to 105. Smyrna High School is extended to establish a little bit of relief for Laverne High School, and then more high school capacity is needed to solve the utilization of what we need. And at the bottom, that kind of addresses where some of our areas were. We tried to address Stewart's Creek first, because that's where the Beatty Elementary is, then looking at the Blackman area for Blackman Middle, Rockville Middle, and then without a new facility on the north end, there's just not a whole lot of relief that we can provide that way. We have asked RSP to come back in January, that if we were able to secure funding, kind of to tell you what our timeline is. We we got the bid for the mass grading today, correct, Trey? We got it today, and so we will send out for bid for the Beatty actual elementary school December 13th. It'll come back January 18th. Does that sound right? January 18th, so that we will get our board approval, hopefully, in January to come before you for the Beatty Elementary School at the end of January to hopefully go before the full commission in February. As part of next year's budget cycle, I do anticipate us asking for a middle and a high school. I know that there's no revenue for the middle and the high school, but that's what our need is. And so just wanted you to be aware of that's kind of what we are talking about and looking at. Happy to answer any questions on that part.
Just so that, to just reiterate, the middle school has a new middle school in the rezoning.
We don't have a new middle school, then we won't rezone, because it won't make sense for us to rezone kids for a year and then rezone them again as soon as the middle school gets open.
On the high school side, do you have a concept of rezoning if a high school were online in 27, 28, or 28, 29?
I hope to have one in January, because
That's when they're coming back.
Yeah, that is, I kind of mixed my sentences together, sorry. In January, RSP is coming back with a proposal of, if you open a new high school, here's our proposed zoning lines, because I wouldn't want to rezone parts of the county to move in 25, 26, and then move them again in 28, 29, without some type of grandfathering and disrupting kids everywhere.
Mr. Wilson, I'm sorry, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to wrap my head around some of these numbers. So I'm actually going to ask Michael to confirm something for me, and Trey. I just want to make sure I'm digesting this correctly. Elementary school, I'm going to approximate 70 million. Just going to throw that out there. A middle school, 100 million. Trey, I believe you said your last estimate on a high school was 180 million. $350 million. We need, within 2-3 cycles here, a budget.
We didn't include the Laverne High addition or land.
And that's another $30 million. Let's just stay the 350. I want to keep the math easy for everyone to digest this. Michael, I think we talked about, based on current interest rates, for every 50 million, it's somewhere between $3 to $4 million on an annual bond payment. Is that right? Because I want to give a range, just so everyone understands what we're talking about. Was it somewhere like $3.5 to $4 million? Would it be for about every 50 million based on current interest rates? I think we were a little bit over 4%.
$75,000 per million.
So we're looking at a range on what he's asking for. And what we see on concepts here have included a middle school already in there to relieve that. We're talking about needing to add revenue annually, lowest end $21 million. When that's low, it's going to be more than that. That's going just $3 million per every 50, up to $28 million. Let's just say we may need up to $30 million to cover $350 million of bond loans annually for 20 years. That's what we're facing. That's what they're asking for. And that's to catch up with what this is within the next 2 to 3. Am I getting this right? I just want to make sure that we're grasping.
And if you'll flip to the second page right behind that, I think it hits some of your points. And know that we don't ask this just to be asking. I mean, this is truly where we're needing things. So I believe it's the second page. It looks like it has a blue box to the side. Like this one. Second box looks like this. So we just wanted to go back and look, and I think it goes back to show the generosity of the county commission for how much has been funded. But unfortunately, we're growing faster than we can build buildings. And I think it's a really interesting trend. If you look from 2000 to 2010, the number of new buildings that were built. And so from 2000 to 2010, we built 15 new schools. From 2011 to 2023, we've built 6. And one of those was not necessarily a new school, because it was a rebuild of John Coleman. And so when we look at, of course, you got a downturn in the economy, which definitely impacts all of those things. But when we look at why or where we are with not having enough seats, we haven't, even though the funding hasn't caught up with what we need to do for buildings. It's not the commission's fault, it's not the school board's fault, it's where we are. And so we haven't built the seats to fill the number of buildings we've had traditionally. So.
Well, first of all, I use an elementary school and we already have that in our budget. But 280 million is the potential need that the board could be asking us for within the upcoming months. Or we're at 110% on high schools in 5 years. Is that what I'm hearing?
In fact, Chairman, I guess we can go ahead and say we didn't include Laverne, so you're right. Let's throw in that with that, and you're at 300 million. Even that based on the math of what we're looking at with the interest rates, and we don't know where that's going to be over time. Right now, that's not going to come down nearly where it was a few years ago, not anytime soon. So we're looking in the range of $3.5 to $4 million per $50 million of bond debt issued. I'm just saying we're looking at needing 20 years worth of an additional $20 million bucks plus. That's where we are. And that's just for schools. We haven't put people in the schools. And that's just schools, not every other need of the county that we're needing to address, which is every other public service we offer. So I just want this discussion to get out to the public. They need to understand what we're dealing with in these deliberations on what to do with each budget and what the needs are, because these are real kids, these are real families, and I know everyone's upset about being uprooted and driving different distances, but I'm looking at concept maps that the choices people aren't happy with, and they actually include 2 of the 3 new buildings.
Right.
There's not a lot of options that we have right now, and it's simply because we don't have the revenue. So I just want to make sure my math is right, and it is. So everybody understands that that's what we're discussing as this comes on. And yes, we had already discussed the debt service portion of an elementary school. We've been talking about that for a while. I think the sobering fact is to know that the middle school and a Laverne addition plus a high school are going to be needed quickly. And it's going to be during the terms of this commission we're going to have to discuss it.
At a cost of some $22 million a year in debt service.
And at this point, that's not including any other service this county needs to provide. So this is where we are. And I think that's part of why we're asking for help and why the solution, it can't be just put locally and we need help from the state. And I think we all agree that that's where we are, is to figure out what we can do to get assistance. We are one of the fastest growing counties in the country. And I don't think any county commission of any state in this country has a plan to deal with growing as fast as we have, and we're absolutely working as hard and tirelessly as we can. But I just want to make sure we're taking the time to put real numbers out for folks so there's no speculation. This is exactly what it's going to cost us and what your mortgage payment's going to be on these bonds. I'm concerned that that's just going to get us to what we need to get through the next 4 years. I'm concerned on the amount of growth we have during the 4 years and what's going to come on the next one. Now, I'm just saying we have to really look at this with our state and with ourselves and figure out for Rutherford Countyans, what's a 5-year projection look like? We need to actually look at, this is how incrementally we're going to need to possibly fund the services that we desperately need. And I would suggest that we start putting out something to show people what that could look like over 4 to 5 years. Number one is to find out what the state will do to help us. Then we find out what the balance is of what we have to fund ourselves because we can't get assistance, and look at what that looks like and just get that out to the folks. I mean, this is the family checkbook. This is all of us just looking at the kids are going to school and they need things, and we got to figure out how to fund it over the next 5 years. I don't know how to better explain it, but we're all in this together. So I'm just saying to all the folks out there with the school board and everybody, we are trying to figure this out no different than a family at the kitchen table on how we're going to pay the bills. And man, we're working tirelessly. So work with us, and we're going to get the information to you. So thank you for saying this, because the sooner we have these real conversations on the reality of where we're at, the better. And that's what I want the state to hear. This is our financial situation. This commission already took it. And last year, took it on the chin and passed a huge tax increase that no one's happy with. And all it did was bring us up to a balance point without any money for the future. And that's where we're at. That we didn't cause this. This is just where we're at as a community because of growth. And I want to make sure we continue to inform the public of the reality. This is not government not reacting. This is government doing the best we can to try to get revenue in and not put it on the backs of our folks. We're doing the best we can. I just ask you to work with us through this. We're tirelessly, with great effort, trying to find solutions for you.
Commissioner, something I wanted to
Please.
bring up real quick. These numbers are actual real bodies. So they come from, all of our numbers go into EIS, which is where all funding comes from. These are EIS numbers of actual students, and they're just K-12. It does not include pre-K, so that's why if you see like today's 50,900, we've got about another 900 or so students we serve in pre-K, but they're not included in this count. These are strictly out of EIS, what we were funded on for students if we go back and pull that report. And so you can see that number to the far right is the number of kids we added from one year to the next. Last thing, if you don't mind, I want to just kind of keep going through this, if that's okay. It'll be quick. Next was a new challenge, not a new challenge, but a different challenge is what does our growth look like? The next page just gives you an overall. Again, I believe in being transparent with you and letting you see the numbers. This is our English as a second language growth.
You're here, Dr. Sullivan?
Do what? Yes, sorry. It looks like this, has a little bit of red on it. I know that it's just by school. It's not something you're going to get to the weeds into, but it just gives you an idea of how many English language learners do we have in some of our schools. You'll see we have the teacher count, and then over to the far right, we're required to have one teacher for every 35 English language learners. And so I just bold out the Tennessee State Board policy that requires that, and then just above it, how many teachers we need if we hit those. You have each school, the number of teachers, then semester 2. So last semester of last school year, how many English language learners did we have? How many did we have in September, on September 11th? How many did we have on November 13th? You'll see we've added 465 English as a second language learners since September 11th. And so that is we have a very large EL population that is growing, but we talked, it was probably at the August board meeting or health and ed meeting that we had just passed 7,000 English language learners, and we're quickly looking at passing 7,500 just 5 months later. And so that is a challenge, to say the least, an additional challenge for us. One other thing I was asked to present is if you flip over to the next page, as we continue to get bigger, something we always want to keep in mind is just administrative cost and administrative overhead. And so this was conducted by our salary study group. And then the second page, the numbers are just a little bit different because this comes from the state report card. The numbers vary just a little bit, but I wanted you to see Rutherford County compared to the 10 comparable districts for us and what our number of schools, enrollment, number of teachers, school administrators, support staff, and then just what our overall ratios are, because I think that's something that's always good just to keep in mind of where our ratios are compared to others. You'll see we're doing better in some areas, like our student-to-teacher ratio of 15.98 is much better than Clarksville's, but it is not as low as some other places. But then we always want to make sure that that student-to-administrator ratio, we want to keep as high as possible. But we also, as we build big schools, we have to make sure that we staff them appropriately so there's someone to respond to situations and behaviors. And then the next page is the same information, but it is going to be the same information from the State Department. So you'll see the numbers are going to be a little bit different, but they should be close because the first page was our group going and just making sure that they did public records requests to get information from these other districts and then counting it up the best they could. The second one is the one that goes strictly from the state report card based on how all of our funding and positions are. And so you will see it's very similar. It has 15-to-1, and we had 15.98. On school to student support services, they had us at 125.33. The state has us at 124. And then student to instructional leader, so your school administration or student to administrator, 328, they had us at 324. So there's a little bit of variance, but not a whole lot. And I just think it's something that's good to always just keep an eye on where are we operating from that standpoint. And that's all I had presentation-wise.
Dr. Sullivan, I have
Yes, sir.
a quick question, two questions. The first question, in regards to the talk about the funding, is it the federal funding the state may pull? Should they do so, how much would that affect your budget, and how much will we lose out on for Rutherford County?
Upwards of $40 million. They say that they would replace it. I haven't heard as much about that actually occurring recently. Some other news is kind of taking that. Where it would hurt us the most is, yes, it would hurt you in your Title I funded schools, which is our most at-risk students. But I worry just as much about and there was a lot, if you followed it, it went down a very weird trajectory. It went from worried about at-risk students to how much waste we were throwing away at a school meal table, just like we wasted our house. It went very strange. So I haven't heard as much about that the last couple weeks. So, but the state says they would support it and fulfill it if they did.
I appreciate that. And then my next question, it was brought to my attention that I think Siegel Middle is without a school resource officer last week. Were you aware of that?
I'll find out. No.
Okay.
Because we ultimately are not charged with the employment of the SROs, and so when that happens, usually they have to cover it through.
I know they do a floater, but I
Yes.
guess the permanent school resource officer was brought to my attention, so
Thank you.
I just wanted to let you know that.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Two other just quick things to hit on.
I'm sorry, is it on admin?
No, this is just Board
So
of Education.
Commissioner Oliver, I know you just got this, but I would, maybe next month, I'd love your take on the administrator ratios.
I was curious. Yeah, I had
You're
questions.
one
I was
of
just
my
waiting.
experts on this, so again, we can't absorb it all necessarily tonight, but if you,
Yeah,
you
I was
ask a question,
curious,
but next
honestly,
month-
with the 15-to-1, you got a classroom with just 15 kids?
No,
Or do
because
you have 2 teachers for each classroom?
no,
So how is that calculated? I'm
Great
just
question.
curious.
So 15-to-1 is going to include your classroom teachers, your special education teachers, all of those different, your English as a second language teachers, PE, art, music, everybody. And it's truly just taking how many certified teaching staff members do you have and dividing it by the number of kids you have. So no, there's not a classroom that has only 14 or 15 kids in it. Great question. And that number does get lowered a little bit because your career and technical education classes we talked about, CTE, they're capped at 20.
Yeah.
And so that definitely lowers your ratio when you're looking at your middle and high school classes at 35.
Okay, another point I wanted to make, I'm looking at this building and enrollment summary, which I appreciate this. Would love to, I guess, maybe have had this sooner, because I was under the impression, and it was stated, that Riverdale and Oakland had not had anything done since they were built, which I see that's not the case with this, that they have had additions. So this information is very helpful. It looks like, though, with Smyrna's addition, it's not helping them at all. So who did the design? Did they think about the numbers? I mean, this makes no sense to me with the addition, that it's not going to help them at all.
We were asked to cap it at 2,500.
Again,
I agree. There's more kids than there are 2,500 there. I agree with you 100%.
so they'll have the addition. They'll still have the portable classrooms, and
I hope not, but I don't see a way if those numbers come to fruition.
yeah,
They
that's what it
don't.
looks like. And I
unless
think
there's a
that
high
when
school.
the night that they all came to advocate for it, seemed like they were under the impression that they were going to be getting rid of those, but it looks like that's not the case.
Not by the time that this end of 28, 29 gets there.
Okay, okay, great. I had one more question I marked. Hold on one second, I apologize. With regard to the zoning, you said that you were going to have the agency return in January. And what is the reason for that again? I wasn't clear.
Yeah, for them to give us a proposal if we have a new high school on the north end somewhere of either of the two properties that we're looking at right now. So if we build a new high school there and it can open by 28, 29, what would that look like to rezone? Then we may not have to move some families just for 2 years to make them move again.
Okay. All the questions I have for this information right here, but I do have some other questions when the time is appropriate.
Dr. Sullivan, just the student to school services support.
Yep.
Does that go beyond the schools into the admin, or is this just certified folks? I'm sorry, I'm looking.
It is just certified. That would just be certified. So he's looking under the column on the last page, student to school services support. The only ones that would be potentially included in that may, to say certified, yes, they're certified. They may not be a certified teacher, but like a school psychologist is a certified school psychologist, but they may not have a teaching degree. They have a school psychology degree instead.
Mr. Wilson, did you have a? Oh, sorry, I thought you grabbed your mic.
I must have that look on my face, Chairman, like I have questions. It wasn't actually pertaining to this, so as Commissioner Oliver said, when it's appropriate, I would like to ask about an update on the land purchases the two we're looking at. But that's what my face was quizzing.
So just please entertain these numbers at your leisure. If you have questions, submit them, throw us an email to me and Vice Chair Wilson, and if we need to put this back on next month's agenda, we can dissect it more. So we're about to wrap up the question of zoning and the question of the support services to student ratios and move on to other business under Board of Education. It sounds like you guys have some questions on.
A couple quick things just to keep you aware of what's going on. One, TISA funding. So TISA funding was a game changer for us. Over the last week or so, we found out some not great news. One of those, we've talked about the Fast Growth District. The Fast Growth District was $35 million that was allocated from the General Assembly to the fastest growing districts in the state. When they ran their model, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, they actually were supposed to pay out $37 million instead of $35, so they prorated us down. So we should have gotten right over $5.1 million for that. Instead, we're getting 4.7, 4.8. Does that sound accurate? The part that is the most important for us for is that $35 million also included a second stipend, which was the fast growth infrastructure stipend. Those allocations are only available if they don't expend the original $35 million. And they went over that $35 million, so there are no funds available for fast-growing infrastructure stipends for school systems in the state of Tennessee. So that's not great news. We got that information, was it the Tuesday of Thanksgiving break? I don't want to blame the State Department, but the way we get information recently has been whatever the day is before they close, when they shut the lights off is when we get our new email notification. So that's been really, I'm not joking, am I, Brian? It's been really appreciated. Like, here you go, we're closing for 5 days. The other part that is not great is that we have grown in enrollment. TISA very much was sold, and I'm hopeful that in talking to the legislative body, they'll be able to address this, because this is all State Department of Education done. This is nothing that our state delegation did. This is just State Department. Is that when it looks at your enrollment, we have to turn our enrollment in every 20 days under reporting periods. TISA was sold as money's going to follow the kid. So when new kids come, the money's going to follow the kid. The money follows the kid the next year. And so we have added all these students, and we used to get even BEP growth for it. We'll get growth for it, but it'll be for next year. Well, for fast-growing or any growing districts, you're always going to be a further year behind. So the money up front was amazing. The portions that you're growing, money follows the kid, the money's following the kid for all these ESL students we've added. They get the base of 6860, and then they get a ULN weight for them for up to 25 or 50%. So an extra $2,500 to $3,000 per kid. We'll see that, but it'll be for next year. And unfortunately, next year we'll have already grown again and we'll be further behind. So I have an email ready to send to our state delegation about that. Hey, can you guys look at this portion of it? Because that's truly Tennessee Department of Education driven. Two, I want to always end with a positive. Teacher shortages are doing very well, so that is what we use TISA for, is to make sure that we could really invest in our people, because without people, it doesn't matter what great curriculum buildings we have, we're not going to be in good space. The biggest area we have openings is in special education, and that is more of a, there is no waiver you can get for a special education teacher, but when I hear other directors talk about the dozens upon dozens and even more openings they have, when you're not talking about a true classroom teacher, we're filling those positions. We may have 10 to 12 at one time that gets open because somebody goes on maternity or somebody moves, but outside of SPED, we're doing great. And then graduation rate. So if you look at the top 5 districts for enrollment, so we were very well above the other 5 large districts. So we were at 96.2 or 96.4%, which was much higher than the other districts that are like us. So we're very, very proud of the work that we continue to do there. So something we should celebrate. Happy to take all the questions now.
Okay. These are kind of different things. At any rate, question about any updates with Roy Waldron.
The annex portion of it, will be closed at the end of this school year, and then if we need to renovate it for being an alternative behavior setting for elementary school, then that'll be part of our 177 budget request for next year.
Ready? Next question. I was at Laverne Middle School today for their Amazing Shake judging. One of the students was asked the question about what they would like to improve. It was a young man, and he said the men's bathroom, the boys' bathroom, they need doors. They don't have doors. There are issues with their bathrooms. So I wanted to bring that to you and Trey Lee's attention. Yeah. He gave quite a impressive speech about the improvements he would like to see in the boys' bathroom at Laverne Middle School. So I wanted to bring that to your attention.
What grade was he in? Do you happen to know?
Excuse me?
Do you know what grade he was in?
I think it was 7th grader.
Okay. That just helps me be able to figure out what hallway he was on.
I think he's a 7th grader. At any rate, that was the concern. Quite convincing speech. Another question, and this will probably kind of, I'll leave that one because I can probably dovetail on my colleague's question. But another question I had was about the staff supplements and the significance of delineating 60 and what is the impetus of that as it relates to who gets the supplement and who doesn't. And if I was just kind of concerned about that and wanted to
that administrative assistant principal, I believe.
Yes.
That came from our salary study group that we did of just staff supplements. It's very similar to what Williamson County does with their administrative staff, because it really came to our attention. A school like Stewart's Creek is different than a school like, I mean, no offense to some of our small schools, but it is different than running a school like Plainview or Campus School. One of them has 1,300 kids and one of them has 400 or 300 in campus schools setting. And so 60 was just the number that they'd used from comparable districts, to the best of my knowledge.
My concern here is a smaller school, the staff is doing more work. With your larger campuses, you have larger staff, coaches, APs, all that kind of stuff. And if you have an alternative school just because it's smaller,
Agree, yes.
the workload,
Yes. Agree.
Requires, I think, the reward. So I was just kind of curious about that, and I would hope that the board could kind of look at that again. But I just kind of was curious about that.
We absolutely will, because that was our first time doing something like that.
Okay, thank you for that. And my other one was about land use, and I'll just wait for my colleague to speak to that.
I'll tell you, I don't have an update on land because I have not met with Jeff Reed yet. I'll meet with Jeff Reed before our board meeting next week. And so that should be where that is, but I don't have an update for you.
Okay. I've got two more questions. One's related to it, but I want to save that for my last question. So you're discussing, TISA, and this information, disappointing that we found out on exactly how the funding is going to come. Have you guys projected how that's going to affect this year's budget?
It won't because we didn't budget that type of funding.
Okay, that's what I wanted to hear, just to make it clear, because okay, just so everybody heard that. So there's something we're going to get next year, but that's not going to affect this year's particular budget. Okay. My question is, as we're looking at the challenges, we're all keeping tabs on anything we may need money for that we didn't see coming before we get to the end of this budget cycle. And this leads to my last question, because at last month's Health and Ed meeting, I said we need to talk about when these land purchases come up, that it's something you decide to pursue, we need a plan on how we're going to pay for it so it doesn't drag on so long that the seller may decide to actually quit negotiating with us. I'm very concerned about that because you know how slow it is to move through committees and have government work. So, we had talked about just plans on what the school board can contribute. So, of course, when you talked about TISA and there being some issues, my thinking is, my goodness, you have a sum of money that if we ever use it, we're going to get one crack at using it wisely, and we have to be extremely wise on how that happens. So just if we can continue conversations with budget and through us, how would we pay for something, get something under contract, have a plan, and does the commission need to actually look at appropriating funds for that? So do you have any update on that? Obviously, we're looking at a couple. You could say if you bought them, they could be anywhere in the range of 15 to 25 million. So just if you have anything to say about that at this point, that would be great.
If I'm being forward thinking, I would love to have both pieces of property that we are looking at right now. One for current and one for 5 or 6 years from now. Williamson County did that about a decade and a half ago, and now when they go to, for the most part, when they go to build a school, they already have the site. And so that helps because they bought it at one, a cheaper price, and two, they're able to move a little bit faster. Talking about the land, you're right, because even if we get to a negotiated amount, we're going to be 60 to 90 days out for testing as well, just for doing all of our work that we do for testing. So it is much slower than I would like for it to, but outside of that part, I don't know how to speed that up. But you were spot on. Hitting on the budget portion, no. And doing this budget, we budgeted it differently. You guys know we are very transparent in our budget. I know you get a lot of questions about it. We did not have 20, 30, 40 million dollars of funding that, hey, we're going $28 million into the hole, but we actually come out into the positive. That's not how we budgeted. We budgeted very much to this is what we expect our expenditure to be to match with our revenue. So is there a $10 or $15 million variance? No, there's not a $10 or $15 million variance. But we also did not budget some of the revenue that we knew that we would receive from the State Department if different items came up. Is it going to be tight? Yeah, it's going to be tight, but that is us making sure that we're using our resources and being honest with what we expect to spend versus what we expect to, and we watch it. If not every day, every other day. Brian and I are talking, I said, so let me see our expenditure report, let me see our revenue report to watch it. Some of our lines that we'll have to do amendments, cleanup amendments. Our additional ESL students, that is definitely an extra cost that we'll be able to use some of our growth funds. But at the same point, we have special education openings that we can offset and amend some of that money around to cover some of those things. So that was a long story but we did not budget the funds I talked about to meet a balanced budget. Glad you brought that up.
So you're thinking just have earmarked money, the commission earmark money for next year's budget for land that may or may not get used.
Chairman, that's exactly the point I'm making. It's just whatever we can do to be in front of all these discussions, because time is of the essence. And I also know what it's like out there with sellers on these family trusts. Some of them may choose to not want to deal with us because it's a family trust. There's many decision makers. All I'm doing is saying anything we can do to start thinking forward on the amount of money we need when it comes time, to not waste any time so a seller is willing to sell us that property. We have to do that due diligence ourselves to be prepared for that. We just don't need anything to impede us acquiring land. We are desperate. You see the needs we have. And the biggest thing is the north end shows it's where the need is. So this is very specific. We need something up in that area. So anything we're looking at, I just don't want anything that would possibly scare off a seller because developers are coming. Rutherford County land and Rutherford County dirt is still the best value you can get in Middle Tennessee, and developers are going to look for that product, and people are going to want to come here for our low taxes, our outstanding school system, and that's what's creating the growth issue. So I just don't want anything to scare off a great school site because a developer would come in and they feel like, hey, these guys are ready to sign with us in 30 days. I'm not going to mess with government. I'm just trying to bring that to our attention. So anything you can do to make sure budget or anyone hears about, let's just, if we have to contribute and we need to find something, just the sooner the better. I'd rather at least have the conversation, especially if you know we're going to make the purchases. Let's estimate what we think we might be and start talking about it.
To kind of connect to that, so we are just about out of all the different cards we can pull to try to help. So we gave 10 cents back to general purpose or to debt service this last year, a penny off of 177 to go back to it. We've talked about using some of our fund balance to be able to purchase land. We've rezoned to use all of our seats. So we're to the point of there's not a whole lot of other options that we have as a local school board to be able to control.
Thanks for the acknowledgement.
I did have one more question. I was told that there is land in the Las Casas area. Can you speak to that?
We have land at the Matthews property, which is right beside Walter Hill Elementary across the street. We do have land there.
And any plans?
Someday a middle and a high school right beside the elementary, but that's not where building right there right now would basically shift all of Smyrna High School that way and all of Laverne to Smyrna and everything else over. So it would be, from a cost perspective, purchasing the land, yeah, it would be cheaper to go ahead and build on the Matthews property we have there.
Yeah.
From a long-term transportation cost and all the different things associated, I still believe it's the better move for us to build on the north end instead of that. But it's earmarked for a middle and a high school. I always like to be completely transparent. I grew up in Walter Hill. If I could open a high school there, I would open a high school there, but that's not where the need is. No, we don't need to name it. I just want to go open it. No, a sad face mascot. Thank you. Yes.
That concludes the agenda portion. Mr. Gooch, did you have
I was going to say, since there's no other questions, I appreciate this director and the finance director coming by and giving us a good report. So thank you so much. Anything else?
Let's approve the report. I don't know if that's necessary, but I would entertain a motion to approve the report. Mr. Gooch, while I got the microphone.
Second.
Second. All in favor, say aye. Thank you, guys, and thanks for being spontaneous. And again, committee, if there are routine reports you want to hear, contemplate that. Let's filter it up, and we can make that part of our monthly agenda. When's our next meeting? Anyone? I'm sorry to put you on the spot. Okay, so that is not that sounds like we've already worked around the holidays. So the 19th, good with everyone? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn to the 19th. Meeting adjourned.